Hi, I'm Alex Newman, and I'm the founder of Great Wealth Management. So you've worked your entire life in order to accumulate these assets inside of your 401k plan, and now the time has finally come. It is time to retire. In this video, I'm going to go over the 5 most important things that you need to do inside of your 401k before pulling that trigger to retire. All right, so follow along with me. So number 1 is risk. I cannot tell you how many times that I have seen a client that thought that they were conservative and not taking a lot of risk in their portfolio to then pull up their portfolio and see that it is an aggressive account. So in order for us to manage risk and to measure risk, we usually use something that's called a stock to bond ratio. Now, typically, the more stocks that you have in a portfolio, the more aggressive you are. The more bonds you have in a portfolio, the more conservative you are. So in a moderate portfolio, a portfolio that's kind of right there in the middle, not aggressive and not conservative, in a moderate portfolio typically has a 50 to 50, so 50% stock, 50% bonds inside of your portfolio. This means that it's not taking nearly as much risk as having a 100% stock portfolio. Now, with stocks, of course, it's going to be a little more volatile. And so you're going to see a lot more ups and downs versus bonds. Their focus is just paying interest, right? So with bonds, it's going to be a lot slower moves and ultimately really helps to smooth out the volatility of your overall portfolio. So that's number 1 is risk. Make sure that you are not in an aggressive portfolio, or if you are in an aggressive portfolio, make sure that you're comfortable with taking that risk. Number 2, beneficiaries. We want to make sure that you have proper beneficiaries inside of your account. It is very easy to overlook that or possibly to have a beneficiary that's no longer alive or with us today. And so go inside, make sure that you have the proper beneficiaries inside of your 401k, because God forbid if something happens to you and ends your retirement journey early, we want to make sure that those funds are going to go to who you wish for them to go to. Rule number 3, allocation. And so inside of your portfolio, it is extremely important to make sure that it is allocated properly. Now, what I mean by allocation is really looking and seeing how much is here in the US, how much is outside of the US, in emerging markets, in developed markets, countries like Brazil, Russia, India, or developed markets like Europe. We want to make sure that your portfolio is properly allocated and that it is also properly diversified. And so when looking at allocation, we also want to look at sectors. So how much do you have in technology? How much do you have in healthcare? How much do you have in industrials? This is all very important because the world is ever changing and we want to make sure that your portfolio is changing along with it. So in order to pull up the allocation of your portfolio, when you go inside of your typical 401k and you see all of the individual holdings, so a lot of times there's mutual funds inside of there. If you take the ticker symbol, so usually there's a 3 or 4 digit letters that you can take and just do a simple Google search. What you'll find is when you do the Google search, you'll be able to look much more in depth into that specific mutual fund, find out who's managing it, find out also what they're focused on and overly weighted towards. So again, example given, technology. Number 4 is expenses. So inside of there, when you look at the mutual fund, you are also able to see the expense ratio. The expense ratio is the cost in order to pay for these managers that are managing this investment for you. So dive in there, make sure that your expense ratio is ideally relatively low. These can range. They could range from just 5 basis points, which is just a fraction of a percent, or they could be 1% or higher. So this is very important to make sure that you understand the expenses that are inside of your portfolio. Last but not least is number 5. Number 5 is taxes. We want to make sure that your taxes are being deferred as much as possible, or if it's a Roth, which means that you've already paid taxes on this investment, we want to make sure that you're utilizing that properly. And so a common misconception, or some things that I see happen way too often, is somebody retiring and they take their whole 401k out of their 401k and move it over to their checking or savings account. That is a big no-no. The problem is that if you do that, what will happen is those funds would be considered as income, and you will have to pay taxes on all of that money. So for example, if you have $200,000, it's time to retire, and you cash out that 401k and put it in your checking or savings, you are now going to have $200,000 in income that you're going to have to account for. So that could be a pretty big tax bill. So we want to make sure that you have a strategy on using those funds, and rolling it over properly if that's what you wish. And rolling over the funds simply means that you're pulling it from your 401k and transferring those funds into an IRA, which stands for an individual retirement account. This is something that we can help you with, but with that process, that allows for it to move from a 401k over to an IRA without there being any tax consequences. And then not only that, but also then you have access to a lot more bells and whistles, such as tax planning, active management inside of your 401k, or excuse me, inside of your IRA, proper diversification, updated calls, right? So staying up to date on what's going on inside of your portfolio. These are all very important things to make sure that you can get retired, but also stay retired. So thank you for joining me on Uncorking Your Retirement. Again, my name is Alex Newman, and cheers to your retirement.